special to roll equipment to use depending on the tactical battlefield situation. The SDR's equipment are as follows. A full width mine plough. It is designed to plough mines out of the ground the full width of the vehicle. It has several settings to adjust the depth to which to plough. Python, not here today, but it's normally towed, is an explosive rope 78 millimeters in diameter, 228 meters in length, and is packed with explosives. This is fired into the minefield and is detonated, which will clear most blast susceptible mines to a width of 7.3 meters. The Trojan will then plough the blasted lane to make sure the lane is 100% clear of mines. The obstacle marking system. The OMS is a system that files holes into the ground to mark the safe lane through the minefield while it is being ploughed by the Trojan. The system can be set to fire automatically or manually by the vehicle commander. The bulldozer earth moving attachment, the beamer, is fitted to breach roadblocks, dig tank slots and general earth moving for fortification. The excavator is used to load and unload stores and equipment from the trailer. It is also used to launch and recover the mini fascine pipes you can see on its back because of its ability to scoop as well as grab. The bucket can scoop up a remarkable 3 square meters of spoil. The mini pipe fascine are used to breach ditches and act as culverts, interchangeable with its predecessor, the Challenger 1. It has had more than 150 major modifications, including a completely new turret, the L30A1 120mm gun, and second generation chopper armor known as Dorchester. Challenger 2's thermal observation and gunnery sight displays a magnified image for the commander and gunner. The commander has a gyro-stabilized panoramic sight complete with a laser rangefinder and thermal imager. Above the loader's hatch is a remote weapon station which is fitted with a 7.62mm general purpose machine gun. The Army currently has 3 armoured regiments, each equipped with 56 Challenger 2s, organised into 3 squadrons of 18 tanks, with 2 tanks in the commanding officer's tactical headquarters. This Challenger 2 is the theatre entry standard platform known locally as Megatron and is being driven today by Staff Sergeant Dart of the Dorset Yeomanry, which is the Army's reserve. And the gunner's seat is Trooper Keys, and it's driven by Trooper Cook of the King's Royal Hussars. Ladies and gentlemen, Challenger 2 packs a punch.
Oh, of course, everyone stands up.
Oh, you insufferable.
So, ladies and gentlemen, show your appreciation. Soldiers involved in this display work extremely hard to prepare vehicles for deployment around the world. They fill an important role as well as training the future generations of the Royal Armoured Corps here at Bovington. It takes considerable time and effort to get these vehicles with us here today, and I'd like to thank Major Alan Pott and W2 Lassman, who have provided all the backup to this display, both today.
Otherwise, they were now part of the Royal Armoured Corps. They were all going to have the same cap badge, which is another interesting feature. When the war came along, though, all of that was put off, so we've still got this same regimental system of guys who serve in armoured vehicles, now ladies as well. And they are now all part of the Royal Armoured Corps, even though they're part of these separate regiments that serve in different types of armoured vehicles. So we picked on a Sherman from the Second World War. For the post-war period, we've picked on a Centurion tank. Now the Centurion also not only represents the British Army, it's also that classic period where some in the audience may remember about national service. Now national servicemen, overall about 2 million males, between the ages of 18, ended up being moved from pillar to post, sees very little actual action before finally it ends up surrendering at Périgueux, almost in central France, on the 15th of July 1940. Now a number of Chars that were captured by the Germans were actually handed over, or basically put back in German factories, upgraded, and you can see one of those inside the museum. We've actually got a Chars on display that was actually used by the Germans. It was used to patrol Jersey during the war. About 60 Chars ended up being converted into flamethrowers for the German military. And again, the French forces, after D-Day, a number of Chars were captured back, and actually some of them saw action again with French forces, sometimes when they were laying siege to the Channel ports. Now, we've only got the 2 FTs and this Chars, so unfortunately we couldn't do a French tank section on its own, but we've brought on a number now of some of our historic German armour to come on as well. So following on that wonderful Chars there, we've got the Tank Museum's Panzer III. Now this particular vehicle was captured out in North Africa. It's quite a famous vehicle in the sense that we've got all the reports that were written on it in the archive and library. A number of Panzer IIIs and Panzer IVs were brought back. One of the other things that came back is that Kettenkrug. That was actually captured in Tunisia in 1943 and sent back to the UK for evaluation. And again, a privately owned vehicle also captured in North Africa, that's Sturmgeschütz. Now the Sturmgeschütz is a privately owned vehicle that actually, after its evaluation, went through a number of tests, ended up as a range target on Pirbright ranges, and ended up in private owners' hands. John Phillips has restored this vehicle. He's done it imaginatively, I can put it that way, by being very clever about how he's done it. Obviously, German armour is very rare, it tends to be very expensive. John's put out appeals for spare parts. People have come forward sometimes to offer us spare parts for an awful lot of money, and then realise what is going on and ended up giving it to him for next to nothing. So it's a wonderful restoration from what was really a very little superstructure that was remained underneath all that vehicle after it had been on the firing range. It's actually got a 432 engine in the back to power it around, but that was one of only a few Sturmgeschützes that were sent out to North Africa almost as a trial to see how they were going to be working. Now it's based on the Panzer III chassis, so you can see our Panzer III, our L model there, with a long-barreled 50mm gun. The Sturmgeschütz starts its life as a assault gun. It's basically there with a 75mm gun to support the infantry in the attack. And what happens is, well, after the invasion of Russia, they realised that actually if you put an anti-tank gun, like a 7.5cm gun on a Sturmgeschütz, it makes a very good mobile anti-tank gun. So but what they do is they learn lessons. And one of the things they do, they call the vehicle a combat car, because they're not allowed to build them as tanks, so that's a way of getting around the rules and regulations. And they come up with an M3 tank, which this is an M3A1, and as part of the process in building the M3, they start off with as an M2. As part of the process of building them, they're learning a lot about things such as track development, suspension, what type of engines we might be able to use. Let's use maybe the powerful engines like from aeroplanes. And in the end, that was proved to be very useful. When the Americans in 1939, they realised war was coming, they actually for the first time set up an armoured force in July vehicle. They really want to build this tank that's coming on now, the M4 Sherman. So after a year of building the M3 Grant, they've got the factory space together that they can start building the Sherman. Now, Roosevelt says to the American military, I want 1,000 tanks being built a month. He then changes his mind and he goes back and he says, no, I want 2,000 tanks built a month. And that's one of the key reasons why we've got so many different variations on the Sherman tank. I'll explain them in a moment, but the whole idea was ended up going abroad. They were gifted to or lend-lease to the British military or other nationalities.
Here's Fury now.
The M4A3 tank ended up with a Ford petrol engine in it, again because they couldn't make it, or they couldn't get enough of those Continental radial engines. The whole point of the radial engine, it was an aeroplane engine, so the air industry was also after that engine. And they ended up also with the M4A4, which has a Chrysler multi-bank engine in the back of it. And that was famously these 5 commercial engines all bolted together on a common drive shaft. They had to make the tank longer to fit that new engine in. So again, it's another reason why Shermans are different shapes. Now on top of all that, if you're reading in your gun it, so they ended up getting hold of the D25 gun. It's a 122mm gun, this gun on this tank. The IS-1, not many made. IS-2 sees action in World War II, quite a considerable bit of action from 44 onwards. And then they came up with this tank, the IS-3. Now this doesn't see combat in World War II, but it's famously paraded in September of 45 in Berlin at one of the victory parades. And it's a tank that immediately starts getting the West rather jittery. Because obviously a 122mm gun, very powerful. They quite out another armoured target. So 20 rounds will be carried of HE, only 8 rounds of armour piercing. Now the IS-3 sees some action. It's used in Hungary in the Prague Spring of 1968, Hungary 56. 100 of them are actually also sold to the Egyptians. And the Egyptians in the Middle East, they had mixed success with them. Many of them were used in static positions where the firepower was impressive, but they didn't actually end up using them in a very mobile manner. Now that IS-3 has come over from the Brussels military collection, the Royal Military Collection of Brussels. It made a DT-10 gun on it. A very simple fire control system it had, only 34 rounds carried, but in use, reliable, very simple, huge numbers made and exported and sold on all around the world. The Chinese copies were sold into the Middle East, and we've got a number that were captured in the first Gulf War off the Iraqi army. Now it's followed by the T-72 tank, a lot more sinister looking vehicle. Now if you compare the military, they handed over about 156 of these armoured. So 3 of those were needed to recover a Tiger 1. Until they got the Berg Panther, the armoured recovery Panther tank, a lot of Tigers had to be left or abandoned or blown up on the battlefield because there simply wasn't a way of recovering them. So having armoured recovery, very important. Now this is our guest Centurion tank, a Mark 12, a late model Mark 12 tank they're driving around. Probably most people, I think with any sense, would argue the best tank ever designed. Superb bit of British engineering from the end of the Second World War, and it wasn't Centurion anymore, but again, very, very impressive tank, and again, probably the last generation of tank that the crew could fix relatively easily itself with a hammer or a spanner, because most of the mechanical systems were very simple inside. Now we're looking then at for the British forces, the Centurion's replacement. We're looking there at the Chieftain. And when we see the Chieftain, again looking at those three areas, the British Army's lesson from World War II, we wanted more protection on our tank, and boy did we want firepower. We were fed on the end of the barrel. Under that cap there is a mirror, and a light can be shone from inside the tank to that mirror, bounces back inside. It's called a muzzle reference system, and it makes sure that that barrel is not warped in any way or bent in any way before the gun fires. So that can take out an enemy tank first round out to about 2.5 kilometres away, and that is stunningly accurate. Most of the time in World War II a tank would fire a round over, 1 round under, and if we're lucky the third round's about on target. Not anymore. Of course, the weak point of the Chieftain
Ladies and gentlemen, it's our last night here in Osmington Mills. The last night we're going to be spending here. I mean, it's still Saturday, but yeah, tomorrow's the last day of Tankfest, so we're not going to stay until Monday. I'm going to pack up in the morning, head off to Tankfest one last time, and then we're all going to leave at 4. The Dutch guys arrived on Thursday, and I think that's about it. Oh yeah, we saw Odd. Yeah, it's been a good week. Really enjoyed myself. And now another week at my aunt's, which hopefully will go well. Well guys, it's come to this. Out here, standing on the side of the road, waiting for my aunt. All the guys have left. The Dutch are going back to Dutchland. Mason's going back home. Baldrick is going back home. And now, just waiting for a car to come down that road. Yep, alone in Bovington, with no transport of my own. Just me and my own 2 legs. But don't worry, I have a taxi called my aunt, who's late. And this is one creaky fence. I don't know if I'll be making videos during my week at my aunt's, but it is going to be a week until I can make any real videos on YouTube, for you guys to watch. But hey, at least I got to see the mighty Jingles twice in one weekend. But yeah, didn't actually get to speak to him today because he probably figured that, you know, I spoke to him yesterday, so don't need to speak to him again. And annoyingly, that's when I was going to pose, you know, I've got an empty Discord server, you can have that. And I forgot, so yay! Yay for my Civ memory. Stuck in the military town. If I keep this camera on for any longer, they're going to arrest me. Oh! So, I don't know if I'll see you tomorrow, but if I do, then, well, that's that. But I suppose this will be that. I'll see you in the next one, guys. Until then, good night.